All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host, Chris Control, and we are live from the 336. Once again for episode 192 of the 815 exchange. And I honestly don't even know really what, I have a couple different titles that I'm sure I'll conjure up by the end of when I'm doing, the editing and the uploading process for this episode. But this weekend just kind of felt like the end of an era. In a sense, it felt like an end of an era, and it felt like a bunch of new beginnings in a sense. Between what I'm going to talk about is, to start off, finishing a story from the end of the Caitlin Clark era in college basketball and the NBA getting closer and closer, and also what is happening in entertainment right now as we speak. It just felt like, a full circle, but also like a new beginning. I felt it was a different type of feeling in the air for me. So we're going to talk about all that. And like I said, that clearly previews that we have plenty to talk about today on today's episode. As always, remember to like, share, and subscribe if you guys are enjoying the content. And as always, everything you're looking for can be found in the description. So listen, timestamps provided in the description. Feel free to skip ahead. It's long form content. I know. So yeah. Timestamps provided there, social media links there, and in the outro. Without further ado, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, we are starting off, all right? I haven't talked about wrestling, okay? I'm a wrestling fan, for those that don't know. I haven't talked about wrestling very much, if ever. On all 192 episodes, I don't think we've ever had a wrestling segment. I don't think I've ever talked about wrestling. But you know what? This is my show, right? This is my show. I thought about talking MLB, but you know what? That's boring. No, but not that the MLB is boring right now, but it's the beginning of the season. Nothing's really going on. And wrestling is just so hot right now. It's just so hot right now. And after one of the greatest WrestleManias of all time, WrestleMania 40, especially, not that there was anything wrong with night 1, but night 2 and that main event and what happened, how could I not dedicate a segment? How could I not talk about it with you guys today? So let's talk about it, ladies and gentlemen, because Cody Rhodes, the grandson of a plumber, the American Nightmare, has finally finished the story as he takes out Roman Reigns after his 1,300-day, fourth longest ever world title reign in WWE history. He takes down the Tribal Chief in the Bloodline in one of the greatest matches of all time. That's the only way I can put it. It is one of the greatest matches of all time. And I urge you, even if you've been away, if you've been away, you won't be able to catch, I guess, the full magnitude, but get like a general scope, right? Understand, Cody, his history, understand a little bit if you need to know about the Shield, if you don't know who the Shield are, right? Understand those certain story beats, understand a little bit about Roman. It's better if you've seen it all, of course, but understand a general knowledge. But even if you've come from, you've been away from WWE, watch this. Watch this and it will take you back, because this is everything. This story in this match was everything I love about professional wrestling. Everything I love about sports entertainment, whatever you want to call it. Everything I love about it. It was incredible. The action, the callbacks, just the story. It was beautifully articulate. It was just perfect. All hail the King of Kings, Triple H. To quote Paul Heyman in his Hall of Fame, speech, just all hell Paul Levesque. All right, all hell Paul Levesque, because it was just magic. All right, Cody finishes the story. Came down to at the end, Roman had a choice. He had a choice. He had a choice between finishing off Cody, continue the reign, or get his revenge. And this story did not start 2 years ago or 3 years ago when Cody came back. It started 10 years ago when Seth Rollins took a chair to Roman Reigns' back and changed the industry forever. When the Shield broke up and Rollins took that chair, Roman never recovered. Even when they came back together, he never recovered. He never got over it. It's been the one chink in the armor of the most unstoppable champion we may have ever seen. Unbeatable, unfathomable, unstoppable. But the Achilles heel was always Seth Rollins. Seth always has Roman's number, and in the Shield especially, he's able to tap into that emotion. So that was a great story beat to kind of come back to. Roman decides, I'm going to get my lick back. I'm going to get my revenge from 10 years ago. You came out in the Shield gear. You've been taunting me all this time. He takes the chair to Seth. That gives the window of opportunity. So Cody can hit the three crossroads and finish his story. It's an amazing. I mean, a lot of people criticized, and even I was a little bit critical of when Roman won last year and whether it was going to be worth it. And, I should have listened to The Rock because they took us on a ride, and boy, was it worth it. Seth, I mean, his entire story was just redemption this week. Even though he lost everything, Seth Rollins as a character has been very selfish. It's dating back to when he was the betrayer, right? He was the betrayer of the Shield. He's the one that broke it up, right? And throughout his career, he's had this selfishness. And this weekend he was redeemed. Even though he lost his title, right? His body, he sacrificed everything. Even in the match, he didn't even land anything. He just came in with the chair, got Superman punch intercepted by Roman, right? And then took the chair to the back. He sacrificed everything, to take down the bloodline, to be Cody's Shield the way that he said he was, and redeemed himself. It was great character growth. Roman, it was his undoing, right? The tribal chief has been near unstoppable, right? We've never seen him. He hasn't lost. His one loss was to Seth in the Royal Rumble 2 years ago, and it was a DQ. Roman was unbeatable, it seemed, and the one thing that stopped him, the one area was the trauma of never getting over the Shield being broken, the thing that sent him down this descent, right? That fall, the stuff with the crowd and him not getting over because of Vince, and then all the way to this tribal chief character. It was just beautiful. And then everybody coming back, the pops. I mean, from Jimmy to Jay to Solo to Cena to Rock into the Shield. Seth comes in. And then, I'm not going to lie, when that Shield theme hit, by the way, monster pop. I thought for a second, even though it was ridiculous and there was no way, for a second, and you may have also too, I thought that Dean Ambrose, also known as Jon Moxley now, I thought he was going to walk out. I don't know why. It was completely irrational. But for a second, I was like, it's WrestleMania. Maybe, just maybe. That would have, of course, put it over the top. And then we had Taker come out to take out The Rock. I know a lot of people, and even I expected Stone Cold. But honestly, thinking back, even though, hearing, obviously, the glass shattering and the chills we'd have gotten from that, as The Rock would say, even though that didn't happen, I think it was almost better because of the story with Roman. Because this is still part of Roman's story and the story of the tribal chief and kind of his undoing. A big part of that, of course, was when Roman beat Undertaker and really kind of started showing those glimpses of what a heel or a villainous, a more ruthless kind of Roman looked like. That's kind of really the first glimpse we got of that. So bringing Taker back for that, and also the fact that Taker is kind of the final boss, right? Rock has been calling himself the final boss. Undertaker for 30 years was the final boss, kind of in a way. He's the Grim Reaper of WWE. So him kind of coming back in that moment makes a lot of sense. Then we had the classic, all the baby faces, everybody that helped. The Cody Vengers, as we deemed them, kind of helped celebrate. Super emotional moment. Sam Irving, the GOAT, broken up about it. Michael Cole with another great call. The GOAT also. It was just a lot of GOATs. Heyman was great, of course, as always, his manager. Roman cements his place as one of the greatest of all time. And Cody finishes one of the greatest stories of all time at one of the greatest manias ever. All right, lived up to the hype. I could go on and on and on, but I don't want to make this podcast any longer because it should be a shorter one, honestly, today. But just absolute magic. Highly recommended. What a WrestleMania moment. But yeah, that was generational. All right, that was generational. I had to speak on it. Also, got to give a shout out to Bayley for getting it done in a great match versus Io. By the way, both the ladies world champions held it down. Becky and Rhea. Becky had like a fever, was sick before it. Rhea had a panic attack. Also had my favorite entrance of the week. I looked like a rock star. The aura with her emotionless in the white coming down. So that was great for Rhea. But her and Bayley, Io, all held it down. Shout out to Damage Control as well. Naomi, Jade, and Bianca also had a very solid match. Night 2, like I said, had the goods. Drew as well, and his undoing was also super crazy, with Damon getting to finally cash in. He was not as dumb as everybody thought, Everybody's like, oh, Damien, he hasn't cashed in. Well, there you go. There you go. Biggest WrestleMania ever. Perfect moment with Punk right there. And Drew, his hate. We had a lot of stories of hate being too much. Even with Gunter and Sammy, right? His sadism, his hate for Sammy, right? Cost him his title. Drew lost his moment because he couldn't stop taunting CM Punk. So Damian had the perfect opportunity to cash in. So yeah, it was just an amazing WrestleMania. Wrestling has never been hotter. All right, at least since, right before when I was born during the Attitude Era. So, hey, it's cool again. To quote The Rock, wrestling is cool again, and I'm so happy to be a fan. And I can't wait for this new era. Going to watch Raw tonight, alongside the National Championship, of course. Now, we're going to let college basketball because Caitlin Clark deserves her time, and South Carolina and Dawn Staley most definitely deserve their time in the main event. So we're going to go NBA next, yeah? We're going to go NBA. We got some things to talk about. We are in the last couple weeks, last week, I think, maybe a week or two, might be a week and a half, honestly, of the regular season. So the East is pretty much shored up, pretty much done up. We all kind of clinched. However, there's still some jockeying, some momentum to be gained. And once again, it's another week where Wemby is in some colossal, insane duel. This week it's with the 76ers. No Embiid, because Embiid is injured, of course. But the 76ers get a much-needed win. All right, even though it's against the Spurs, a much-needed win. Great game. Overtime, again. Tyrese Maxey had 53 points. 53. What a star turn, even though he did take 41. He went 19 from 41, which is kind of grim. I'm not going to hold you. Kind of grim, but still. Maxey concludes what was a great week for the city of Philadelphia with a great electrifying win versus San Antonio. But yeah, Maxey, what a star turn. I feel like we all kind of had a feeling that, he could be headed that way. I think he was a little bit underrated going into the draft. I think he always had the skill set. And Philly's done a great job developing him and letting him kind of grow into that second star. And he was the right choice. It was him or Harden, right? And they made the right choice going with the younger, super talented guard in Maxey. It's paid off. Wemby had 33, 18, 6, and 7. I'm not going to do the whole Wemby, worst TV you're ever going to see him. This is listen, you get it now. All right? How many times I got to say it? He is the one. You know it. I know it. They all know it. The light right there knows it. The camera knows it. Wemby is the one. He showed it once again. 33, 18, 6, and 7 is absurd. He also should be Defensive Player of the Year, if we're being honest. Anyways, the Dallas Mavericks have completely ethered the Houston, which is really funny talking about ethering people. Anyways, they ethered the Rockets, who have now lost 6 straight, by the way, because March is over. March is done. And we will never forget. We will never forget. The same way we will never forget the Tribal Chiefs' legendary 3.5-year run, we will never forget the Houston Rockets of March 2024. It was a historic team. However, they are back to the Houston Rockets. All right. And the Dallas Mavericks have put it on them twice. All right. Killing blow here. Instead of Luka, who still went off, by the way, he had 37, 9, and 12 for the MVP candidate. Kyrie had 48. Dante Exum sent it to overtime, and what was a great call, by the way. One of the best calls, I think, of the year. He had 14 and 9. He's kind of revitalized his career, so shout out to the Mavericks for that. Dylan Brooks had 29, even though he got cooked. Federico needs to be a little bit more clutch for my taste, but he still had 21 and 12. JG had 21, 6, and 8. So he's definitely a lot better, even though he hasn't been on a heater, as hot as he was in March. He's still been a good player. So, I think we're going to see a better version of JG going forward. And, of course, this Houston team is without Sengun, and I think that definitely changes things. And I think next year they'll be a lot better, with more development. Again, super young team. Not the end of the world, but, yeah, the Mavs are making a little bit of a run here. Speaking of a run, the Golden State Warriors have won 6 in a row. I'm still not falling for it. I'm sorry. I can't fall for it. I really can't. They're playing well. They're winning games, but I cannot fall for it. It just feels like it's too much turmoil. I'm not a believer. I'm not a believer. I know it's Chef. I know anything can happen, but I am not a believer in the Warriors. But they have won 6 straight and have kind of, put some space. And of course they clinched, away from the Rockets. So they will be in the play-in at least, but I am not a believer yet. I'm not a believer. By the way, in the way that the East, play-in is pretty much, we're signed, sealed, delivered. The West is absolute chaos. From 6 to 9, they're separated by 2 games. Phoenix, New Orleans, Sacramento, the Lakers, who lost yesterday after AD got hurt, all separated by like 2 games. Okay, it is coming down to the wire. It's going to be very interesting. Because you can either be in the play-in or you can be out of the play-in. Like, if you get hot right here in these last 2 weeks, you can either make sure, hey, I don't have to fight for position and I can duck, the Nuggets, so to speak, or I could end up in the play-in and I'm fighting for my life. So another great move, and a great example of the play-in being beneficial here late. But very, very close race here for playoff position in the Western Conference. But that was the NBA. We'll see how it closes. Now for entertainment. Now, while WWE had their in-game level event, right? They had their, I'm calling it WWE in-game, right? Their Avengers level event, their series finale, their season finale, whatever you want to call it. They weren't the only ones. Invincible with their own season finale. Hopefully the wait for season 3 is not as long, but nonetheless, they closed it fantastically. All right, it's been a great season. I just hate the gap, the time we had to wait, but it was worth it. But I do hate it. But if it was for animation purposes or even to make the next season wait a little bit shorter so he could get a little bit of a head start, I'm fine with it. But Invincible, all right, season 2 finale delivered on all fronts. Mark versus Angstrom Levy. All right, long awaited. All right. Now, could they have done a little bit better job kind of building up Levy as a villain for Mark, as a foil? Maybe. But they did him justice. All right, boy, did they make him intimidating, ruthless, and make you feel like, okay, Mark's family is in some real danger with Levy kind of having control of that situation. So I think they did a great job with that. Steven Yeun, by the way, and Sandra Oh are phenomenal. Oh my goodness. Oscar level stuff from a voice acting perspective from those two. They were great. Honestly, everybody in the show was great. The emotion was felt, and they did a great job in that Mark versus Levy fight with him having Debbie and Oliver and just kind of everything that went down there. That was, just really, 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 really extremely well done. So a lot to be proud for on the Invincible team there. Mark, of course, takes Levy to that, or really Angstrom takes Mark to that different dimension. And Mark does now I guess the world knows, but in the comics is definitely one of the more iconic lines, "I thought you were stronger," which was really, really well done. I like the more brutalized Mark that we see in the show, more of the blood. I like that kind of aspect. Just kind of felt more of the emotion of Mark feeling like, what have I done? His greatest fear is becoming his father. In that moment, he felt like he became his father. So, yeah, Mark and Levy was very, 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 very well done. Debbie is a G. Still one of the best characters I think in all of television. Just her as a mother. One of the best motherly figures I think we've ever seen on any kind of television medium. She is really where Mark gets a lot of his strength from in the show. So shout out to Debbie as always. Mark and Eve, the seeds being planted there. Of course, him and Amber are done. Eve from the other dimension tells Mark that she loves him and that he needs to tell Eve yes or no if he loves her or not. You can probably figure out how that's going to go, but they tease it a little bit there at the end. And of course, Alan and Nolan are on the Viltrumite ship. We will see what happens there. And of course, there is a Viltrumite conquest looming on the horizon. Hint, hint. So we will see what happens there in season 3, but Invincible definitely delivered. Oh boy. Now, my entire show was altered last night for a couple of different reasons, besides WrestleMania, but also what happened after WrestleMania. In college basketball and in entertainment, which we're about to talk about here, Jermaine Cole, vaunted member of the quote-unquote Big Three, North Carolina native, Dreamville native, currently at Dreamville Fest, which was this past weekend, heard some mixed reviews. And one of my favorite rappers. Of course, I love all the Big Three. Of course, Drake is my favorite, no secret. But Cole, obviously one of my favorite artists. Oh boy. I was very prepared to talk about... I wasn't going to give an album rating, by the way, to either Tiller or Mike Lee later. But I was prepared to call it one of the best projects of the year, which it still, technically speaking, so far is. It was, this impromptu album, a little warm-up before the fall-off, and really in response to Kendrick Lamar's diss on Like That. And I was prepared to talk about 7-minute warning, and I was going to, and let me get it off, right? HYB featuring Boss and Cinch went off. By the way, Cinch went off. Love the star turn for Cinch. Love the boy. But Cinch went off on that. One of my favorite tracks. I think Pricey featuring Gucci, Dro, and Ari Lennox was a great tone setter for the project. And of course, I was going to talk about 7-minute warning, where he answered Kendrick and, brought in some very interesting conversations, by the way, about Kendrick's discography, which is still great. Don't get me wrong. But I'm not going to lie. People, as much as I love Kendrick, I have to admit, meat riding. There's a lot of meat riding going on with K-Dot and his discography, and he gets a little bit of a pass more than the other two members, especially J. Cole after today. But definitely more of a pass than the other two members of the Big Three, quote unquote, because he's seen as this, savant, which he's great. But he's seen as a little bit of a savant, and people let K-Dot get off with a lot. And it's not always great, but I feel like if Kendrick coughed into a mic for 2 minutes, people would say it's this award-winning, introspective, such a testament on the world in America. And people would just, it's a circle jerk, all right? To put it brutally, it's a big circle jerk around K-Dot, and it's a little bit of an issue. It's annoying, but I love him, all right? I love K-Dot, but I think that those conversations were necessary, all right? Some humbling of the discography. But J. Cole went on Dreamville, his own, not just show, his own festival, headlining, everybody watching, and said that he asked for forgiveness. He said sorry for dissing Kendrick because it didn't sit right with his spirit. I get being the bigger man. I get being more mature, but it is too late for all that, brother. It is too late. Cole, is too late. You can't declare war. And then, it is a crazy look. It is a crazy look getting dissed. Kendrick didn't, and I know everybody's like, oh, but he dissed Drake. Cole caught shots. Cole caught shots on that, right? If we gonna hold Drake to this, why are we gonna hold Cole accountable too, right? He caught shots on this. Kendrick didn't. If that's your boy, he didn't say sorry. He didn't apologize after dropping that verse, but you apologized after you did, and it wasn't even a full-on diss. You just gave him a couple lines. Crazy look. Crazy look for Cole. He has tarnished his legacy, unfortunately, by doing this. I don't know. I get it. It didn't sit right. I get maybe you didn't want to do it, but it is a crazy thing to do. Even if you did that in silence, right? But coming out and making a public apology to a man who dissed you for dissing back? For all this talk about Drake as not Drake, but hip-hop is a competitive sport. For all that talk, for all that talk about you taking out rappers, you being the best, you called yourself the Muhammad Ali of the Big Three, and for you to do this, I can't even defend the boy. That's my dog, but I can't even defend it. I can't even defend it. If you weren't sure about whether you wanted to respond, you should have just waited till Drake was done with the tour, which now he's done with. And Drake gets to come back fresh off a tour, showed out 87 shows. He been chilling on vacation, said he was taking a hiatus. He comes back to the rap game. It is in shambles. We got Future and Metro coming this weekend. Cole probably going to get Blitzkrieg there too. It's down bad, all right? Cole down bad. After what should have been a high. After last night, he is just down bad, getting shredded on X, getting shredded around the world. What a blow. What a blow. To wave the white flag like that is crazy. But might delete later, nonetheless, was still a very good project. Bryson Tiller is never left, by the way. Never left. He never left, but he is certainly back with the self-titled Bryson Tiller album. It was great. It's going to be one of my favorite albums of the year. I'm not going to hold you. I love Tiller, one of my favorite artists. Attention and Eon Lust, I think, were my two favorites so far off of first listen. But I think that's definitely going to... Attention's going to stay. but definitely going to change. Of course, he has some great lead-up singles, by the way. Whatever She Wants, Calypso were both, ear candy. They were fantastic. So yeah, shout out to Pen Griffey. Shout out to God Tiller, because he most definitely delivered on Bryson Tiller, the album. So yeah, the boy was good. Unfortunately, got overshadowed by that coldest, but hey, Tilla, still good. Good music. Go check it out. It gets a super cosign. A mega cosign. I wrote that cosign in pen. All right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time. Yes, it is national championship time here in college basketball. Of course, the men's national championship is tonight. We'll preview that. But of course, yesterday we had the end of an era. Whether she won or lost, it was going to be the end of an era. And here we are. It was inevitable, really. South Carolina was always, for a second though, I will admit, when she came out and did what she did to start that game, which I didn't expect, when she came out and had that little bit of magic left, and they put that thing on South Carolina in that first quarter, for a half second, I thought, oh my goodness, is she really going to do this? Is she really about to do this? And I guess that's part of the greatness with Caitlin Clark. It is giving us that feeling of, is she really going to do this? Because and you actually question it. It's not like I'm just saying this because all right. But there was a little bit of me that thought, man, she might really drop 50 or 60 and really win this game. That's the crazy thing. But it was inevitable. All right, South Carolina was inevitable the whole year, undefeated. Give Dawn Staley her flowers. Right now. I'm not even going to say anything right now. You give them to her first. Right? I'm going to give you some time. Flowers. All right, let's talk about it. One of the greatest to ever do it. One of the greatest coaches to ever do it. And as great as this team was, and I'll give the players their flowers. Camila, Tessa, Raven, Johnson & Johnson, as we call them now. Chloe Kate. As much as I'm going to give them a shine, this is about Dawn Staley. This championship was on Dawn Staley, being one of the greatest coaches of all time, for being the recruiting process, for building a team. This is a team. Camila's a star, right? But there isn't a Caitlin Clark level superstar, which there are very few of those in the world, on that team. There's not even a Paige Buckers on that team, right? Camila and Cam, I know people will argue about. I wouldn't even say like a Cam on that team. A Juju on that team, right? They don't have like this superstar player that's just leading them and is dominant. This is just a good, well-balanced machine. It is a machine in South Carolina. That is the greatest indictment of this team, is how it reflects Dawn. Because they answered to her, they answered the call. When they went down in that first quarter, they answered the call. They responded to her. They responded and reverted back to the tendencies they have shown all year. In the face of adversity, South Carolina has never folded. They have never faltered this year. And that is the greatest indictment I could ever give any coach in any team, is that when it got tough for South Carolina in those big moments, they never, ever, ever got shook. Never got shook. Never looked panicked. And it's why they prevailed. It's why they prevailed. Just such a perfectly built team. And it's a different type of composition to the usual great teams of all time that we see, right? Where it's like, like I said, the superstar in the middle, maybe another star here or there. No, this is just a team. This was a team with more than a starting five. How many times did we see the bench for South Carolina get it done this year? And it happened here, right? 37-0, by the way. 37, which is another thing when we start talking about Caitlin in a little bit. 37-0. South Carolina's bench outscored Iowa's bench in this game. Levels. This South Carolina team was on a different level than Iowa as a team. As great as one singular player is, and boy is she great. One of the greatest, to quote Dawn Staley. This is a team game. At the end of the day, basketball is a team game. And as we've seen in the NBA with Braun and some of the crazy carry jobs he's brought to the finals, at the end of the day, no matter how great Braun is, and he might be the greatest ever, if he didn't have a great team, or he was facing a team that was better than his, right? A better composition, it was going to be very hard for him to win, or he couldn't win. And that is what happened here. That is what happened here. And I have to give a shout out to the great Dawn Staley for that. Again, further seeing, she was already a Hall of Famer. So, she just continuing to build on her greatness at this point. Camila Cardoso, top 5 pick. 16 and 17. Nothing else needs to be said. All right, they out-rebound. Her and Kits nearly out-rebound Iowa by themselves. I think they were 2 off. 16 and 7. Camila was dominant. We knew Iowa was not going to have an answer for her. They did not in this game. Camila dominated. Kits, she's been such a force all year, just in terms of like a sign of stability for that team. She had a double-double, 11 and 10. Tessa Johnson, baby. Tessa. 19, off the bench. Mint. Just mint. All right, she was mint in this game. Johnson was great as a whole, but Tessa, and by the way, not just in this game, Tessa Johnson has stepped up multiple times throughout this tournament run for South Carolina and gotten it done. Been that spark plug off the bench that they need and just kind of puts them over as top as a team. So yeah, shout out to Tessa. Led all scores on the South Carolina side with 19. That's another crazy thing, right? They won this game. Not a single person scored more than 19 points. What a team, bro. What a team. All right, we didn't even talk about Malaysia in this game really like that, but, she still had her moments. Raven Johnson shot 1 for, I think, 11 in this game, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter because when Caitlin Clark went off in that first quarter, and after a year, remember a year ago, Caitlin Clark famously or infamously waved off Raven Johnson. Because to put it very brutally and bluntly, Raven, by the way, former number 2 recruit in the country, couldn't shoot. She couldn't shoot last year. Caitlin was right to wave her off. Anybody would do it. And they won the game, by the way. It was the right thing. It was cocky as hell, but, I'd wave her off too. But Raven Johnson said, I want to be a great player. So she hopped in the gym. She replayed that moment over and over and over and again. And instead of letting that define her, she hopped in the gym. She got to work. She greatly improved her shooting this year, so there will be no more waving off. And by the way, she's a fantastic defender if you didn't know. And after yesterday, you better know. Because she did a fantastic, one of the best jobs, by the way. Her and Nikki Moe, by the way, because we're not really going to talk about UConn, but UConn, of course, took Iowa to the brink. That was the right call. I know you're upset, UConn fans. We're going to get to you. But it was the right call. You got to call it. But, Anyways. Her and Nikki did great defense, by the way, this past weekend on, Caitlin as much as you can. Did some of the best jobs, but Raven did a great job. I think Caitlin was only like 1 for 5 against her. So, yeah. And, of course, that big still at the end of the first half. Just a great job. Great job from Raven. Even though she didn't shoot well, that defense, and defense wins championships, ladies and gentlemen, was much more valuable than anything she could have brought offensively when the rest of the team held it down the way they did. Caitlin. In fact, you know what? I'm going to transition so I can get like a full, segment on this, right? All right, so yeah, I just transitioned. You just did the wave. I just filtered off. Yeah, I'm back. Caitlin. Yeah, let's talk about Caitlin Clark, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, I'm going to miss Kate. I'm really going to miss Kate. In this game, like we said, she was phenomenal. Phenomenal in the first quarter. She looked like Caitlin Clark every bit. The deep threes, start off scorching hot. 18 in the first quarter. South Carolina adjusted, as all great teams do, and gave her a little bit, more of an issue. They said, there's 1 or 2 ways, right? There's 1 or 2 ways to play Caitlin. And that's it. And you can get beat either way. But there's only 2 ways to play her. You either, 1, shut Caitlin down, make everybody else beat you, which is oftentimes the better choice to do, right? Is try to minimize as much damage as Caitlin could do, make it harder for her, cause some turnovers with her, try to get her frustrated, right? When she was younger and couldn't control her emotions as well, that was the go-to, get her frustrated because she'd take herself out of the game. But you can do that, or number 2, you just let Caitlin go off and stop everybody else, which also can work, right? It's been done, but also is a little bit, rougher because if Caitlin just takes over a game, if you play at Caitlin's place, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. She will take over the game. You will be stuck lagging behind her, and she will cook you. South Carolina chose the first, and it was the right choice, ultimately. They made the adjustment, and they managed to prevail. Caitlin still finishes with 38-5. She has broken too many records for me to honestly count and go over. on this show, I would be here all day. All right. NCAA tournament assist record, NCAA tournament points record, single like session. It's all of it. All right. She broke every record imaginable during this tournament run, during this year. All right. But boy, oh boy, the greater conversation, of course, this past week, and especially these past, let's say 48 hours, 72 hours, especially since the UConn, and really this whole week leading up to the UConn game, was whether Caitlin Clark is great. And I feel like we've done this before. I feel like I've sat in this chair before and we've talked about whether Caitlin Clark is great or not. So I won't go into that whole spiel. Because it's a very simple answer. Hell yeah. Hell yeah, Caitlin Clark is great. Hell yeah, she's one of the all-time greats if you want to put a little prevalent on there. She's not just a great player. Yeah, there's an argument for her to being the greatest of all time. Whether she won that game yesterday, by the way, or not. Even if she had won, if she'd have won, she'd have been the GOAT. Near undisputed, I'd go as far as saying. But even without it, she's the GOAT. She's a GOAT level. She's in that conversation. Because it's a little different when you break it down, right? As much as Stewie and Diana and the rest of the UConn girls or whoever came out, Lynette Woodard came out crazy, by the way. I mean, that is a crazy thing to do after everything Iowa did to kind of be like, yo, let's bring her back in the spotlight and say, you know, here's some flowers to Lynette Woodard, right? Who a lot of us did not know who you were. With all due respect, the casuals had no idea who you were before this happened. For you to come out and say what you said at that is grimy. So grimy. But nonetheless, it's different with Caitlin, right? She didn't go to UConn, right? Even with Paige. There's going to be a UConn after Paige. There was a UConn before Paige. With Brianna. Brianna wasn't the first. I mean, Brianna, again, all-time great. GOAT level player. Brianna wasn't anything trailblazing at UConn. There was Maya before her. And Maya's a GOAT level player, but there was somebody before Maya. There was Diana before Maya. And before Diana, you know, it might have been Lobo. Before Lobo, it may have been Sue. They were all kind of the same class. But really, I mean, it's more of at this point, it's a diamond on Gino, right? And how great Gino is. Gino Auriemma as the greatest women's coach ever, right? The program he's built at UConn. There's a history there. You're not the first. You're not building anything. You're joining a machine, and how great you are in that machine, of course, is a testament to, you know, how good you are. But you're not doing anything never seen before, right? None of them did. Join the machine. Great at it. Nothing against them. All-time great players. Love them. But it's different. It's different when you go and you stay home and you go to Iowa, who had one Final Four. One. 30 years ago. The last time Iowa went to the Final Four is over a decade older than Caitlin Clark. Or maybe exactly a decade. Sure, they had Megan Gustafson, right, in that short moment and made her like an Elite Eight right before Caitlin arrived. Literally a year before Caitlin arrived. I was actually at that game. But there was nothing. There was nothing here before she was there at Iowa. She elevated that program. Carver is the house that Caitlin built. And let's be honest, with all due respect to Kate Martin and Gabby Marshall and Hannah Stolke, they're not playing in the WNBA. A lot of those players she played with, they're not going pro. They're getting their degrees and they're going to be nurses and doctors and lawyers. And, you know, they'll be out here in the workforce with us. They're not going to the league. She's playing with 2, 3, maybe a 4-star, 1 or 2. She's not playing with a bunch of other McDonald's All-Americans. She elevated that team. You're right. Her stats are inflated because she is the system. But there's nobody else in the country that could do what Caitlin Clark can do and be the system the way that Caitlin Clark is the system, is the franchise, to put it as we do in sports, in Iowa. She built that program. She built that program. She elevated And she, with all due respect, carried that program to 2 straight national championships. She ran into better teams in LSU. She ran into better teams in South Carolina. By the way, who she beat? She has beaten every team she's ever played in the NCAA tournament, by the way. Fun fact, she beat. She beat. The only reason we're not talking about Dawn Staley in South Carolina repeating right now, and is one of the greatest dynasties, which they still may become, in college basketball history, and this an all-time run, is because of Caitlin Clark's existence. Perhaps the only reason LSU and South Carolina aren't matching up, and LSU maybe didn't go back-to-back this year, is because of Caitlin Clark's existence. That is a generational player. That is a generational player. When has there been a moment when the spotlight is bright, when with all the expectations on the world on Caitlin Clark, with, by the way, even further, more eyes watching her than ever in the history of the sport? When has she ever shied away from the spotlight and not delivered? Every single time we had expectation for her, she delivered. That is greatness. That is an all-time great. That is what a greatest of all-time level talent looks like. How many people can say they entered the sport and left it in a better place the way that Caitlin Clark has? There have been other great players, maybe even you could say better players than Caitlin Clark if you want to go that far. Before her, she stands on the shoulders of giants, as they say. But she has been mighty giant herself. Mighty giant herself. Because this next generation will now stand on what she did. And I'm going to give her flowers. Even though it was a team effort in that entire, which I've talked countlessly about, that special class of 2020, Cammie, Paige, Angel, Cam, HVL, even though she's down right now, Deja Kelly, even though she's down right now, Aaliyah Edwards. I could go on and on about that class. Grace Parrish in Indiana. I think Tahina was in this class as well. Electric. They delivered on all fronts what they did for the game. But at that focal point of it, the big star of it, whether it was by merit or whatever you want to call it, she was the one and she proved it. She proved it. And you can never, ever, whatever you want to say about Caitlin, whether you think she's overrated or not, you cannot take away what she did for the game of not just collegiate women's basketball, but for women's basketball. Because 4 years ago, you weren't talking about it. 4 years ago, everybody wasn't talking about it. When is the last time the face of college basketball was a woman? And not even a debate. She held the pressure, she held the expectation, and she carried it like nobody has. That is greatness. That is greatness. So I could never hold her not winning, even though I'm sure the Big Ten and everybody she's had to play would greatly be like, yo, I don't know what you're talking about with all these rings after the way she butchered them and stole all those championships these past 4 years in the Big Ten. I'm sure they'd have a great argument about that. But I can never hold her not winning the big one over her. Because look at what she built. Look at the culture she built. Look at the people she brought to the stands. Look at the money she brought to this sport. Look at the TV ratings. If you look at the top 5 most watched women's college basketball games ever, there's a reoccurring person. A reoccurring team, but a reoccurring number that you're going to see, and that's 22. Because she's there every single time. I could never, ever, ever hold a ring for her. Because her legacy is not defined by how many championships she's won. It's for what she's done for the sport. And there's an argument that there is very few people in the history of women's basketball that have done as much in the 4 years that she's done at Iowa that they've done for the sport of basketball. That is her legacy. And that is why it didn't matter whether she won or lost on Sunday. Didn't matter. Her legacy was cemented. It was cemented the moment she got all of us to hop in front of a mic, in front of a camera, and talk about whether she's good enough or not. Whether you loved her, whether you hated her. You watched. You felt. That is the mark of greatness. So Caitlin Clark, we bid you adieu. We bid you adieu. One of the greatest to ever do it. And you don't have to believe me. Ask Dawn Staley. Ask Kim Mulkey. Ask Angel Reese. Ask Paige Buckers. Ask Nikki Moe. Ask Raven Johnson. Ask Camila Cardosa. Ask Cam Brink. Ask Tara Vanderveer. Ask everybody. Ask Mackenzie Holmes. Ask JC Sheldon. Ask Lisa Bloater. Ask all of them. Ask the people that were there whether you think Caitlin Clark is one of the greatest of all time. Ask them. You don't have to believe me. I'm sure they'll have all the same answer. Yes. So Caitlin, thank you. Thank you for what you did. Thank you for you taking your part at the helm. Weren't the only one, but thank you for what you did. When the torch was handed to you to push the sport, thank you for what you did. And I know there's a lot of hate going on from the WNBA right now, which happens. By the way, welcome for anybody, women's basketball having a little bit of a come up right now, right? Welcome. The NBA went through it for years. Every time the next one is coming, the people that are there, there's going to be a lot of envy, a lot of jealousy, a lot of haters, a lot of people saying you're overrated or you're not going to do what you did in college. It happens. This is what happens, right? So, and DT is going to be DT. She's a prick. Phenomenal player, but she's a prick. All right, so that wasn't a surprise. But, I wish her the best in the WNBA. And, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to watch it, and her being, the queen of college basketball for 4 years. It was a lot of fun. So yeah, thank you, Caitlin. It was a pleasure. And of course, like we started this off, congratulations to the great Dawn Staley, one of the greatest to ever do it. Now, after all that, I have to talk about men's college basketball. That's kind of crazy, right? I have to talk about men's college basketball because we do have another national championship to talk about. So, NC State, the Cinderella story is over. All right, it's done. Cut it over. Cut the cameras. Purdue wins 63-50. The Burns show, that was all over. There was none of that. He had under 10 points. DJ Horn had 20. Inefficient though, but yeah. The transfer portal all-stars of Raleigh could not get it done. Zach Edey was just too much. 20-12. Purdue was just honestly better, which is not really a surprise, but, they were just better. All right, they said no to the Cinderella stuff. Edey was dominant, and yeah, pretty much what you'd expect with a Purdue game this year. UConn and Alabama, of course, was always going to be the more interesting game, and UConn made a statement, all right, especially in that second half. They just took off. Stephon Castle, in a year where freshmen have fallen off, in record numbers, he appeared and made it happen in the biggest of moments in the Final Four. So respect to Castle. Tied a season high with 21. He was a big reason why UConn got it done. Donovan Clingan versus Zach Edey is going to be an insane matchup. Clingan has been great. I vaulted himself back into the top 5, which is a revolving door, but, welcome to the top 5 Clingan. He might even go number 1 at this point if he goes off tonight. 18-5, 4 blocks for Clingan. He was great. All 5 starters in double figures for Diane Hurley's boys. Sears had 24. Grant Nelson finished off a great tournament run with 19 and 15. I think this is the Grant Nelson we thought we were going to get when he first transferred from North Dakota State. But he appeared here, in the Final Four and throughout the tournament run for Bama, but it was not enough. UConn was just too good. Sears goes out a G, but nonetheless, UConn gets it done. Like I said, UConn Purdue tonight. Of course, by the time you're seeing this, it might even be on. Should be interesting. Again, I got UConn. I think UConn just has a better team. I think the supporting cast is better. Edey, we gonna find out. All right, because Clingan is somebody that can go. He's 7'2". He's not that much shorter than Edey. And he's also moves better. A lot of people would say that Clingan is more skilled than Edey. So going to be a lot of fun there. Going to be very interesting. We will see what happens. I got UConn, but like I said, we'll see what happens, and we'll talk about it next week. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Andy Enfield decides to go to SMU, which means Eric Musselman decides to go from Arkansas to USC. And then, by the way, there was a lot of people talking about when I was talking about Coach Cal after they lost earlier, in the tournament, and how it was time. A lot of people called me out about that being ridiculous and how could they get rid of Cal, and they would never do that, and Cal would never leave, and he's, Would you like to report to the premises now? Is there something you would like to tell me? Is there something you would like to tell me now about how Cal is never leaving Kentucky? Go ahead. Because a little birdie told me, before it actually broke on ESPN, funny enough, a little birdie told me that things are starting to happen in Lexington. I think Cal might be going to Arkansas. And then I waited a couple hours. And suddenly I got a report from Pete Thamel that said, oh, yeah, he's headed to Arkansas. I told you so. I told you so. That's all I can say is I told you so. I told you. Cal was not going to, it was either get fired or leave, and he chose to leave. That's it. That's all it is. That's all it is. I don't even need a brag. I told you so. Simply put, I told you so. Cal going to Arkansas, that's very interesting, but it makes sense. They have the infrastructure there. They got some money in Arkansas. We'll see what he can do with it. Going to be interesting, though, to see what Kentucky does next. I've seen some Nate Oates shouts. We will see. But, yeah, still a developing story, but I told you so, man. I told you. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the Roundup. And, well, racing was back this week. Red Bull is dominating again. All right, so that's how the Japan Grand Prix went, to just tell you straight off the bat. Max was on pole. Max's car didn't fall apart this week, so Max won. Sergio Checo Perez also finished second in the pole, so Red Bull got the 1-2. Carlos Sainz got 3. It's pretty much been what you've seen the entire season. There was no real surprise, nothing like, whoa, nothing big. Charles drove, after a horrifying qualifying, came up big during the race, got that 4th, which is huge for Ferrari in that, trying to get second in the team title over McLaren. That was very, very big from him. So, yeah, shout out to Charles. But, yeah, Verper side, and you've seen it a million times. He wins Japan. Shout out to P, though. I'm glad she got to see her stepdaddy win. Hendrick Motorsports dominates Martinsville. Again, pretty academic. Byron wins. Larson gets second. Chase gets third. So a great weekend. A great weekend for Hendrick Motorsports. Dominant weekend. The defending champion gets a big win. And, of course, they collect more points once again for the team battle with a glorious 1-2-3 at Martinsville. But, yeah, that was racing. Nothing too crazy to talk about. UFC 300 is this weekend, of course. And the card is good, but for, a 100th episode of the UFC, it's nothing remarkable, to be completely honest with you. The main event is still, as of now, Jamal Hill versus Alex Pereira for that light heavyweight throne. Obviously, I'm taking Alex because I have a brain. Not that anything can happen. Now, of course, anything can happen. Jamal can win this, but I'm taking Potan, and he's probably going to knock him out. So at least that might be interesting. But yeah, very clear winner there for me. We've got Weili Zhang versus Yan, which you really can't tell. All right, you really cannot tell with Zhang, Weili, should I say, because she could be great. She could play down. She kind of, alters to, whatever her opponent's level is. And Yan is very good, so she could pull off the upset. That'll be interesting. And of course, Justin Gaethje versus Max. Max going up. Can he handle it? Can he get it done? All right, because JG is no slouch, but it's a really cool legacy fight for two, let's be honest, future Hall of Famers in the sport. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, UFC 300, I'll be tuned in. But of course, for a UFC 300, which you would expect is probably not going to hit. But, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe the card ends up being, more entertaining than we think. And we'll see what happens there. But for episode 192, story's finished. Era's ended. But the show keeps on rolling. Ocho signing off.